song about Wicked. I am fresh out of the theater, you guys. It is literally 10 o'clock at night right now, and I just got back from an early screening, but I decided to record this for all of you guys, and I'm so excited because as a professional musical theater performer and songwriter, I'm gonna give you a perspective that I guarantee you are not going to find anywhere else. My main objective is to answer the question of if this translated from stage to film in a way where I think using the medium of film was justified, like it justified itself as necessary, and then also give my review, my opinions along the way. So I think to start, we need to talk about what my worries were going into this, and I'm being hyperbolic when I say, like, I thought I would be Wicked's #1 hater. Like, that's not true. But what is true is that part of me was afraid that I would be disappointed. And this is because I remember being told during orientation in college that after we graduated, we would never like anything again. And I thought, oh, he's being overdramatic, you know, as theater teachers often are. But he wasn't wrong. I fully understand what my department head meant by that and what he was trying to say. Because it's one thing to learn about how the sausage is made, you know, but like it's another thing to hyper-analyze that same sausage every single day, 8 to 10 hours a day for 3 years straight. And so of course we would come out with some opinions of looking at things differently than we had before. And it's a double-edged sword, right? Because engaging with art in this way has deepened my love for so many songs and shows, because now I'm able to see those masterful songwriting and storytelling details in every single note and every single line. But you can't have masterpieces. You can't know when something is good without knowing when things are flawed as a baseline, right? If you don't know when things are bad, how would you know what a masterpiece is, right? And so that also means that you are able to see more flaws in everything. And I used to think that that was my teacher saying, you'll never like anything again because we would be cursed and unable to unsee flaws in things. But now I realize, and I think that this is more difficult to reconcile for people like me that have, even if you've gone to art school or done something else that's not musical theater, right? You've gone through like formal training and you've realized these things. What's more difficult to reconcile is not that things are flawed, because I like a lot of things that are bad, right? But now I realize, and I think that this is more difficult to reconcile for a lot of us, whether it doesn't even need to be musical theater school, right? If you've gone to art school, you probably understand, and this probably happened to you after learning the fundamentals of art. What's more difficult to reconcile is not the flaws, because I like a lot of things that are bad, but it's the realization that there is a lack of redeeming quality in the thing, and those redeeming qualities would have otherwise dulled the sharpness of those flaws in real time. And it's that realization that the thing you're experiencing is so riddled with problems that it can't overcome that. It can't rise to the challenge of moving you emotionally, which is why we engage with art, which is why we go to the theater, especially with live theater. And you may be sitting here wondering, Cal, I clicked on this video for a review of Wicked. Why are you talking about this? But I say all this to preface what my own personal experience is, and then also to show you guys that I'm pretty hard to please these days, okay? But that also means that when I say something is good, you guys know that I'm being honest. I never thought that the movie was going to be bad, but I thought I could come out of it feeling disappointed for 3 reasons. The first one, I heard they were trying to do the vocals the same way that Les Mis did, and I was sitting here thinking, why the fuck do people keep doing this when it literally never goes well? That was the first thing that put fear into my heart, okay? The second thing is, and this is a personal preference, I can't judge the movie for not being what I want it to be. I'm only judging it in terms of how it fulfills its own objectives as a film, you know what I mean? But that said, I prefer animation to live action. If there are going to be real actors, I would prefer them to just release a pro shot instead of doing a film. Personally, I believe that animation serves the medium better, the medium of musical theater better than live action, and even better than the stage at times, because of what it allows to be possible when it comes to things like character design and the environments and the storyboarding of musical numbers. But I think that those are just like examples, like that's like the thing that it affects. But what the thing actually is that animation does better is over-exaggeration and whimsy. I could obviously rattle off a bunch of other things that are more well served, like in terms of animation, but that's the thing that like holds them all together, is the idea of over-exaggeration and whimsy. And I think the over-exaggeration and whimsy in animation is closer closer to theater, especially theater acting compared to film acting. I don't like film acting style very much. I also didn't like doing it in school either. And with current industry trends, it feels like that we couldn't get a magical looking live action movie anymore. You know what I mean? Like everything is sort of dark and realistic in this like off-putting way because there's an overuse of CGI, which makes it look more fake and less believable, but they're trying to be dark and gritty and real and raw and all that stuff. And you kind of see that like weird dark grittiness with like the Disney live action remakes, which is really weird. But all of that to say, sometimes animation is more believable to me than these live action movies, because with animation, we're already suspending our disbelief instead of like using ugly CGI to like make, you know, to try to convince you that it's happening in the real world. If you're going into an animated movie, you already know it's not your real world. Do you guys know what I'm saying? And so I was disappointed when I heard the movie was going to be live action. I saw a lot of like fan art concepts where, you know, people had done like stylized, like Disney version of Wicked and like 2D and everything, and that was more unique and compelling to me. I thought that that would be like beyond ordinary compared to a film adaptation. It would be special, it would be stylized, and so I thought that this was going to lack the whimsy of theater and the whimsy to make Oz believable. What did not help was some of the color, right? Like some of the lack of color, I should say, that we were seeing in the trailers did not convince me very much. Like some of the sets looked really nice. I remember because I did a reaction to the trailer a long time ago, right? So I remember being like, oh, these sets look really nice, but I wish it was more colorful, right? And then the third thing was just expectations. Like when you wait for something for so long, everyone has a different version of that in their heads. And it becomes like impossible. It's literally impossible for the film to live up to that. Like everyone's individual, unique interpretation or their imagining of what the Wicked movie would be like, right? And so the third thing for me was really just like, it can't be as good as we're all imagining, like all of us are imagining, you know what I mean? But I guess all of these things bring me back into what I said at the beginning of the video. Like, for all art, you must justify. This is the medium the story needed to be told in because of blank, right? Like, there is no other way to do this. It must be because of blank. And I have a hard time believing that for pretty much, you know, most things. Like, before, this was hilarious. So before the movie started, me and Hunter, she's my best friend, we went together. We saw a trailer for the How to Train Your Dragon remake, and I was like, this is fucking stupid. Like, it was literally right before Wicked, and I was sitting there and I was like, you know, no, they're playing the How to Train Your Dragon commercial right before Wicked, and this is what I was afraid of, right? Like, why would I watch How to Train Your Dragon that is beat for beat the same as the animation, but with real people? So I basically thought that Wicked was going to be the equivalent of that. Like, why would I want to watch a worse version of Thing I Like when Thing I Like already exists, and the film does not elevate the experience or make me appreciate the story in a new way? But I am happy to say that Wicked rose to that challenge, and it did make me appreciate the story in a new way. And so that was on my preamble, like everything I wanted to get off my chest and make sure that you guys knew before we actually talk about the movie. Now, let us talk about the movie. I'm gonna try to go in semi-chronological order because that's the way it makes sense in my brain and my memory recollection, and obviously I have no footage or anything to show you, so I think that'll be the easiest way to tell you about, you know, all the stuff that you guys were asking about in the comments. You guys left me a bunch of comments in terms of answering that question, like, how do you think it translated from the stage to the big screen, right? So I'm gonna start with No One Mourns the Wicked, and that is what really sold me and what really locked me in, which obviously an opening number should do, but there was something very specific that happened during No One Mourns the Wicked. And so Glinda comes in, she's trying to do her little light and airy, you know, let us be glad, whatever it is, right? And she's doing her little thing, like, let us rejoice, let us be happy, let us put this all, you know, let us put this all behind us? Yeah, let us put this behind us, right? She's dead, no need to harp on it anymore. And then what you have is that you have the ensemble going into like, no one mourns the wicked, and like they're pulling out, you know, this giant thing of Elphaba literally to burn it, you know, kind of like an equivalent of burning her at the stake, but it's this giant like hay thing, right? Which I think we saw in some of the trailers, but anyway. And so obviously in the musical that happens too. Now I saw the musical when I was 12. Obviously I've watched some slime tutorials since then, but I did see it live. And so obviously different times that you see something hits you differently. So whenever I say something, I'm not saying like the stage didn't do this, but the film did, because who knows? Like the production that you saw in like Japan may have done it. I don't know, right? Like not every version is the same, right? Things just hit different, sometimes even on a different night. So anything that I say, I'm not saying that the stage version did not do it necessarily, but I'm saying it hit me differently tonight. And so what hit me different was that you have everybody like going and getting their pitchforks and like kind of, you know, again, talking about how evil Elphaba was. And Glinda had this facial expression that just immediately sold me and snapped me in, because you see her look around and she's like, what the fuck, right? And so that really got me, and it hit me differently this time, because now I guess that I'm older, I realize what Glinda's trying to do here. She's trying to be like, okay, all the bad times are over. Let us just, you know, move on and be happy. And so she's trying to be, you know, this beacon of hope, I guess. Right? And then these people come in and they're being like nasty, like as nasty as they've been the entire time. You wouldn't think that Elphaba's dead by the way that they're acting, by the way that they hate her so much, you know, and all the vitriol that they have for her. They're not even celebrating anymore. They're just, you know, I don't know, like it's hard to explain, but just like the nastiness in all those people. And you see Glinda going like, whoa, like this is taking a turn. You know what I mean? Because the mob, the people that gathered around to celebrate, have actually kind of turned into an angry mob. It was almost a little scary. So when Glinda had that moment, that's when I was like, oh, this is gonna hit different. I think that that's one of the things, like in terms of a film adaptation, you can linger on facial expressions and stuff like that in a way that, you know, admittedly you can't do on the stage. So the fact that they, you know, when they do this throughout the movie, the fact that they focused on those specific things did heighten the experience, because to see Glinda react that way, you suddenly understand what she was trying to do and how that just falls apart because people still have so much hatred inside of their heart, right? Some other good framing during No One Mourns the Wicked was everybody was like dancing with each other and Glinda was kind of like alone in the center, and so you get the impression that she's held on such a high pedestal that like people obviously like treat her differently, but that means she's also alone at the top. And this also, I think, lined up with the framing of like, goodness knows the Wicked's lives are lonely. Glinda is singing about herself that she feels like she's wicked for having abandoned Elphaba and like not having gone with her and kind of selling out to the wizard. I just thought that that was cool. So No One Mourns the Wicked really locked me in. All of the camera work was really interesting because, you know, in some other like poorly shot musicals, you have a lot of like cut to people's feet, then cut to their face, then cut to their feet, right, to kind of hide the fact that the actor's not dancing. But like there were these like sweeping camera shots where it genuinely looked like it was all done in one take. Like it was kind of crazy, like in terms of the dance numbers and all of that stuff. And so yeah, No One Mourns the Wicked was good. Oh, there were a couple other things I wanted to talk about. Elphaba's mom was hilarious because like you get to know her, I think, a little bit better than the stage. Like during the stage, you don't really know why she's having an affair with the wizard, right? Or at least I don't think that you do. You know, it's kind of implied that maybe she's just sort of flighty. Here she like clearly hates her husband. I thought that that was a compelling choice, right? That was good, but what I will say, I think this happened in No One Mourns the Wicked and not after. So something very interesting that they did, and this is not really a spoiler or whatever. I don't think that you would click on this video if you didn't want to hear it, right? So Elphaba has, like, nurses, because they're the governor of Munchkinland, right? He's basically, like, I don't think that even, like, mayor covers it. He's, like, kind of like the lord of Munchkinland, right? And so they have, like, servants, and the servants are animals, which I thought was a really good choice in order to bring in the animal plot line, but also we understand that the reason why Elphaba cares so much about the animals is because like her nursemaid, the bear, and then she has a couple other ones too. There are a couple other creatures. There's a wolf. I think the wolf is a doctor. Anyway, and so the idea is that the animals did not treat Elphaba, especially the bear nurse lady, did not treat Elphaba any differently, you know, and still loved her and cared for her, and so that's why she cares about them so much. The animals are the only, you know, people that she felt sort of belonging with and that she wasn't othered from, because the animals are also discriminated against, and so they found kind of a unity or like a solidarity together. Even when she was like literally a baby, the bear is the one that's taking care of her and comforting her, and we also see a scene with her and young Nessa. Another cool thing that they did was that they show her opening up the book and like idolizing this pop-up book of the wizard and like, oh, he'll grant your deepest desire. And so you start to get those seeds planted earlier of the animal plot line, and then also this idea that Elphaba idolizes the wizard. And it's not even, I think part of it is wanting her own wish to be granted, but the other part of it is because, oh, he helps people, right? Like, isn't that so amazing that he grants your heart's desire if you go see him, right? It's sort of this like, you know, that she believes that there's like goodness in this world, that there's like this unshaken goodness, and it's the wizard. And so you understand idolizing him more. And those are things that are not in the stage. At least I don't think the animal nurses are, but the young Nessa and Elphaba scene definitely isn't. And so when we talk about did this need to be a film, I do think it elevated the story and enhanced that, especially with the animal nursemaid thing. I don't know what you call it, governess? Yeah, maybe she's supposed to be a governess, but she takes care of her as a baby. So I guess it's, you know, nursemaid turned governess or whatever. Like, that was really compelling. And I thought that that was really, really cool. And you also see Elphaba's relationship with her father more. Like, Nessa is clearly the golden child and Elphaba is the scapegoat child. So yes, no one mourns the wicked. It was good. Ariana Grande was great. I mean, I didn't really doubt her singing ability because she was on Broadway. She was in 13. And then also, obviously, she was in Hairspray, right? And so I was confident in her singing ability, but Ariana Grande really disappears as Glinda, like in terms of like, she stands out, like Glinda is like coming out, but like the Ariana Grande-ness of it all goes in. My only complaint is that they gave her these really thick what do you call it? Like eyelash extension? I don't wear them, so I don't know what they are. You know, like fake lashes or whatever. And they're kind of distracting. They were a little distracting. That's like one of those things, like, I've talked about people saying that the movie's not gonna age well, or that maybe they just mean movies in general, I don't know. But like, because of the makeup trends nowadays, that'll automatically age something, and I kind of understand that because Cynthia Erivo does not have the caterpillar lashes, but Ariana Grande doesn't. It make sense that obviously Elphaba wouldn't, because Elphaba is not as fashionable, but with Glinda, they were a little distracting. So that was the only thing I was like, oh my god, her eyelashes. But anyway, oh, yeah, so that, Glinda, good. Her voice was really good. Full-on soprano. I hope this inspires people to be sopranos. I hope sopranos are not going extinct. Okay, so moving on now to Shiz section. I loved, like, the gondola. I thought that, like, Shiz was just so cool. I like Glinda. Like, she seems to already have friends there, which is kind of weird. I don't understand that unless she's going back for another, semester. Maybe she's just, like, so nice. She's just, you know, makes friends wherever she goes. But we saw her parents, which I think was interesting. And then we also saw, again, more scenes with Nessa and the father and then Elphaba. And obviously the father is in the stage show, but because we already had that scene with him and young Elphaba scalding her, it made the one where she was an adult more impactful, because we can see how she still shrinks around him, because he's just like such a dick. He's just such a jerk, right? All the time. And so the interesting thing that happened in Shiz, because they did do like the Shiz song and everything. I thought Glinda and Elphaba meeting each other, like that was really fun. That had some nice like camera work and stuff. But I'm kind of gonna move past that because I don't have the shots to look at. But like immediately there was just like a connection between Glinda and Elphaba in the Shiz scene. Now what was so interesting in the Shiz scene was that obviously we have that scene of Elphaba levitating Nessa, right? Because Nessa is being like pushed by someone, and we've already established in like 2 other instances that Nessa does not like to be like pushed in her wheelchair. She likes to do it herself. And so Nessa is like protesting against this lady who's like, oh, well, I'll take care of you. I'll take you to the room myself. And like Nessa doesn't want that. She's also not listening to Elphaba because Elphaba was told by her father, like, make sure Nessa settles in okay. And so this lady has whisked her away. That's why the chair thing happens. Now, what was interesting about this scene was that Elphaba cracks this plaque of the wizard that is, we actually saw it in the trailer, and I predicted, like, oh, it'd be really funny if, like, Elphaba destroys that and, like, cracks it, and that's, like, a metaphor for how she will later go against the wizard. I said that in my trailer reaction, and it did happen, and underneath the wizard's thing was, like, bear Moses. I'm not joking. Like, it was all these animals and they were really biblical. Like, it was basically bear Jesus. And so I think what's so fascinating is that first of all, they're doing the animal conflict a lot more, compelling, I guess is the best word. They're just doing it more. They're just doing it more than the stage did, because the stage sort of like breezed by the politics in the book. This one is a lot more adept, is that the right word? This one is a lot more capable of handling the politics, I guess you could say, and it's willing to do it, which is important. So literally, the wizard like appropriated this building and put his face over the original depiction that was there, which seemed to be some animals. And I'm kind of jumping ahead, but I wonder if what they're going to do is that the people that had magic, the people that used to be able to read the grimoire, were animals, and that's why the wizard is so determined to like get rid of them, because he does say something like, oh, when I got here there was like discourse and people were fighting, and so I knew from my world the best way, you know, to bring people together was to give them an enemy to fight against, right? But like in terms of why did he choose the animals and not Munchkin Land or something, like I have a feeling that what they are going to go for part 2 of the movie is that the animals have more power than they did in the book, or there's some sort of like ancient power, right? And so that's also another reason why he wanted to get rid of them. Like, it wasn't just because they were like convenient or whatever. It was also because they could threaten the power balance. Because you see, again, that's on the Shiz University thing, is all these animals and like bear Jesus. It looked very Jesus-y. I don't know if it was Jesus or just supposed to be like, you know, Plato and Socrates and the robes. Like, I don't know if it was supposed to represent education, but it looked magical. And so I feel like that's going to be kind of part of the plot line, is that they were getting rid of the animals because the animals were the ones that could possibly expose the wizard as a fraud, like a threat. The animals were a threat to him. So I found that really interesting. That's when I got excited, right? Because I was already, as I said, I was locked in by the time No One Mourns the Wicked happened. But I was excited when I saw that, because if we're talking about, hey, a film must elevate the experience and make me appreciate the story in a new way, that was something that was not in the stage, and that was something that, you know, there are certain things, not even necessarily that, because you could do that on the stage, I guess, but there were other things that I feel like you couldn't do on the stage, and that's really important, like to have things that would be literally impossible to do in a theater setting, right? So Elphaba did all that, right? I think Wizard and I is coming up next. Glinda's humor, and even Elphaba's humor, is really like endearing in these sections as well. But I do want to talk about Wizard and I, because that's the second thing that hit really different. Now, I don't know if I just blacked out, but I think they cut the Madame Morrible part from Wizard and I, which nobody liked anyway, so I'm okay with that. But I think it's because the lady that plays Madame Morrible cannot sing, and so it was also like a win-win, a convenient thing, but they cut that, which I thought was fine that they cut that. But Wizard and I don't know if, again, I was 12, okay? Yes, I've watched bootlegs, but, like, it's not the same as being there with my fully developed adult brain. This is obviously going to depend on who is playing Elphaba, but I feel like I saw Elphaba in a whole new way tonight, and it was just fantastic, like Cynthia Erivo's performance of Elphaba, because to me, and you guys may tell me, oh, but in the stage version I watched in my small town, it was like this or whatever, you know what I mean? Like, it's possible it could have happened somewhere else, because like hundreds of people have played these characters, right? But I always interpreted Elphaba as sort of very serious and very hardened, and the only place where she lights up is like, you know, and one day you'll say to me, Elphaba, a girl who is so superior. Like, that's when she gets giggly, right? But what was really endearing with Cynthia Erivo is that you had Elphaba be nerdy, like from the very beginning, and that really endeared me to her, because, you know, I think that most people play it at disbelief, like, oh, did that really just happen? Like, have I actually understood or whatever? You know, people play it more like confused almost, right? And like, you sort of build up to the excitement, but she was like, oh my God, like, did that really just happen? Right? Like, she's like nerdy and excited because she was already a fan of the wizard, right? And so I don't think that she needs to think about it as long. And during like the Wizard and I, there was some fantastic like staging, and like Elphaba, like she was skipping on the rocks and like kind of doing a daydream, like she goes like this along some stairs, and some people are kind of like, what the fuck is she doing? And so that was really funny, but like, she was just so nerdy. I know that even stage stage, Elphaba is nerdy, but like this was just, again, a new perspective on the character where I'm like, well, she's just a massive nerd, isn't she? Like she gets so excited about, about these things, like somebody actually seeing her potential and recognizing her, and she's like truly giddy and she's not as serious. And so I feel like that the vulnerability obviously still comes in the stage version, but the vulnerability here I felt really hit me differently seeing this version. Now, I will say during the Wizard and I, the Elphaba goes through like some secret passageway in like some field to do like the Wizard and I and do the big arms and stuff, and there's like a secret statue of the wizard, and it's like Wizard Mount Rushmore, and it just like me and Hunter started laughing, and then as soon as we like started laughing, the rest of the theater, like the two girls beside us and like a couple other people or whatever, like we all started laughing too, or I should say they all started laughing with us, because Hunter was like, that's literally just a statue of Jeff Goldblum's face, right? Like it was just so weird. But it was funny. It was really funny. I totally forgot what I was saying. Oh, but I love Elphaba in this because, like, she's, she becomes so soft in that moment when I always perceived her as sort of, like, again, more serious and more, like, obviously she's hardened, and obviously in The Wizard of Oz she does get excited, but it kind of takes, like, for the middle for her to get excited, whereas she was kind of, like, giddy and nerdy, and, like, it was, like, this little secret that she had for herself and this wish in her heart. Like, it really came out almost immediately, and I was immediately sold on Elphaba. All of the vocals were fantastic. I will say that throughout some other parts of the show, there are some unnecessary riffs. It mostly was noticeable during I'm Not That Girl, which we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but I'll talk about it now. It was a little unnecessary. It's not even like, oh, they're doing it differently from the soundtrack. Like, I don't care about that, but it's like, you need a reason. And it felt like it was just showing off vocal ability, especially when I'm Not That Girl is supposed to be a little more intimate. So I had a problem with that during I'm Not That Girl, and there was another place it happened, but now I can't remember. I don't think it was during Wizard and I, though. I think everything during Wizard and I was fine, but there was another spot where I was like, I don't like it when there's unnecessary riffs and things, right? Because it's less of an acting choice and more for the vocalist to just show off that they can sing, and I'm like, guys, I know that you can sing by now. I guess that brings us to Loathing. Oh, the scene where Elphaba and Glinda, like, they go to their room for the first time or whatever, like Elphaba goes to the room for the first time. That was really good. I love that they shot it that the girls are both sleeping, like they're both in bed after writing the letter to their parents, right? And they're so angry they can't sleep. It also felt like there's a lot in this movie that felt like kind of like subtly homoerotic. Like, oh yeah, you loathe each other so much that you're thinking about each other while lying in bed and like literally can't sleep and your pulse is rushing and you're whatever. There was another moment too during Popular where Glinda like literally tackles Elphaba and they both fall on the bed, but like not on top of each other, just like to the side, and they're both facing each other, and I was like, this movie would be better if it was gay. But anyway, we don't need to talk about that right now. Loathing was really good, and I felt like the other thing that Loathing did really well in terms of talking about things that translated really well from the stage to the screen, or like justifying its existence, was that I loved seeing all their little classes and like getting a montage of the Loathing, right? Because the implication, I guess, in the regular stage musical is that they like hate each other so much and it's been like an hour. Whereas with this, you kind of get the impression that it's been multiple days. And so I really liked that. I thought Loathing was good. Hearing them sing together, like their voices just go very nicely together. They have so much chemistry together. I will say, so somebody asked, how would I describe the arrangements? I think the arrangements are pretty true to the original Broadway cast recording. Like, this is not Mean Girls. They did not like popify it or whatever. But what I will say is that I don't know if I'm just losing my hearing. I don't know if you guys know this, but, people are always like, Cal, you're always yelling, you talk so loud, like, whatever. Like, I'm not doing it, like, for a bit. This is literally how I talk. I've always talked this way, and I don't feel like I'm yelling. I can't hear myself, I guess. And so, like, people always ask if I have hearing problems. Maybe, I don't know. But anyway, at least in my theater, I wanted the sound to be so loud that like my body like had the vibrations, you know what I mean? It was not that loud, and as a result, it kind of sounded like at some times that the performers were singing and there was like a karaoke track behind them, you know what I mean? It didn't feel like that the instruments and the vocals were like at an equivalent level. It felt like the vocals were here and then the instrumental was just like chilling in the back, but that could just be the theater that I saw it at. I think that they really should have turned up the volume because we were like not at volume at all. Like in terms of what I want to literally feel the music in my bones. And so I feel like that that's something that we would have to wait until streaming. This same person also asked, and this kind of is a nice segue because we're talking about it, like they said a movie musical likes to use its cuts to change the setting mid-song while not interrupting the song. As stage musicals have to commit to the established set throughout the song or have a set change during the song. Yeah, like I feel like that is part of the benefits of doing it on the screen versus the stage, is that having the montage, you see them in class together and you see kind of the conflicts and you see how they've been like low-key bullying each other, right? Like Glinda, you know, does something and then Elphaba moves all of Glinda's stuff on top of her bed, and like there's this like nice back and forth with them, and it feels a little bit more spiteful. So I really liked What Is This Feeling? I thought it was really good. I guess after that, we're getting into Dr. Dillamond. I thought that Dr. Dillamond was done really well. Again, I think that the animal plotline is being handled a lot better than the stage musical. I think that that's the biggest thing of what I prefer, because I feel like it has a much more meaningful impact than just like, I don't know, because in the musical it felt like that Elphaba, obviously she cared, but sometimes they don't depict her caring the best, if that makes sense. Like it feels like she's like, I don't know, it depends on what like version you see, but sometimes it can feel like she's just doing them a favor, right? It doesn't feel like she has a personal connection with them. It feels kind of savior-y, whereas this, it felt like it's not savior-y because she is one of you. Like she is also an outcast. You know, Elphaba is an outcast just like the animals, right? And so I really liked that. And so I think what happens is we get to class, right? Dr. Dillamond's class, the animal should be seen, not heard thing is on the board, right? And then class is canceled, and then a little while later, all of the animal teachers are having like a secret meeting in the stables, and then Elphaba wanders in on them. So they changed the context of something bad is happening in Oz. Instead of it just being sung to Elphaba, it's being sung in the group, like with all of the other animal teachers, and Elphaba is accidentally, or I guess on purpose, because she does go after him. She's like, where's Dr. Dillamond going in the middle of the night? So she does go after him, and that is how she finds out what's going on. And there was a really interesting like shadow puppetry where they were explaining what happened to the other animals that they're talking about. Like, you know, they talk about like an owl, munchkin, something, like, you know, forbidden to teach, and he only can screech, right? Like they were showing like shadow puppets of the animals getting like arrested and killed probably. And so that's another thing when people are asking, oh, well, did this need to be filmed? That doesn't happen in the musical. Dr. Dillamond just sings to Elphaba and they're literally just sitting there. And so that sort of visual storytelling I thought was very, very compelling. I like Elphaba kind of eavesdropping on like what is basically like a secret meeting that they have to have because there's eyes everywhere, and it's sort of this, I don't know, 1984 type Orwellian, I don't know, nightmare, right? It kind of is. And so Elphaba says that's why we have a wizard. Like somebody has to tell him, but Dr. Dillamond's like, please don't do that. Don't tell anyone. I think after this scene, which I really, really liked. Also, it's not as off-putting as I thought, all the animal CGI characters. I thought it would be worse than it actually was, but it wasn't. Oh, there's also a nice little heartfelt moment where Dr. Dillamond talks about loving poppies, and then obviously that comes back in The Wizard of Oz, right? The field of poppies that puts them to sleep and everything, and then Elphaba also uses that later in the thing with the lion. I don't remember if that happens in the musical. So in the musical, I thought that Elphaba just sort of opened the cage with the lion and then ran away with him. In this version, when we get to that scene, the poppies are used to like put everyone asleep, and that's part of Elphaba's magic, and I thought that was a little better. Maybe, I don't know, it might happen in both. Fact check me, I guess. Again, guys, this is a very informal, sort of just getting all of my thoughts out type video. Obviously, when the movie comes to streaming, I will do a shorter, less chaotic version of this. You know what I mean? Where I analyze stuff a little bit better. Oh, yes. Elphaba leaves, right? Secret animal meeting. And then Fiyero almost runs her over with his horse. What I found interesting is that his horse could talk, right? So what I was thinking, I guess, was that there are animals, right, like lowercase, and then there's animals uppercase. I'm pretty sure that the books did that, but for whatever reason, Fiyero's horse is not a horse like lowercase, he's a horse uppercase and he can talk. So again, it's kind of showing the fact that the animals are in servitude to people, which is interesting. And so he almost runs over Elphaba. We get a nice little scene where he's like, wow, a woman who doesn't take my shit. Like, I love her. And then Fiyero obviously comes to school. Now, I think that, like, the two standout musical numbers for me were definitely Dancing Through Life and then the Emerald City, like, One Short Day. I think that those were, like, in terms of the visuals, because you have this library, and I can't really explain it, but like imagine like a clock, like the gears in a clock, right? Like the library was like the gears of the clock, and so you had people hanging off the side trying to get books as it's like turning like a giant hamster wheel. And so yeah, Dancing Through Life had some amazing like shots and everything. And this is something that sort of happened in between scenes, right? Like this isn't, you know, any particular place. I think this happened actually after Dancing Through Life, like much, much later. I think after I'm Not That Girl. But something I really like is that because, you know, this is film and we're living in these moments a little bit more, I was able to notice that the friendship group between Nessa, Bach, Fiyero, Glinda, and Elphaba, like obviously this comes later because we need to get to the Ozdust before Glinda and everyone, like, they're all friends. But, like, you believe that they're an actual group of friends, like, you know, the friends you go to college with. And you see the little interactions that they have in the background. Like, there's one point where, like, Fiyero and Bach do a little, like, you know, fist bump or something. And, like, Bach is being, like, awkward. And it's cute. And it's just a background moment. Obviously, sometimes stuff like that does happen in, like, theater. But just in the context of where it was in this shot, I don't think that it would have happened in a stage setting. You know what I mean? Because I think during I'm Not That Girl, Elphaba's usually alone, whereas this time she was like sort of longingly looking into the distance and looking at Fiyero, but Fiyero was interacting with Nessa, Bach, and Glinda. And so it was almost like, I think that she was, you know, the song is recontextualized. I know I'm getting ahead of myself. That it's not just like that Elphaba wishes for the man, but like the idea of like normalcy and like normal relationships. And so to see that her sister's happily paired off, but that she may never find love like that. And so to see, you know, it's kind of like if you've ever been in a friend group and everyone's dating each other, like, and you're the odd one out and it kind of like is awkward. I think that it was like kind of a normalcy thing. Like, what if I never find love like that? Like my sister has, Glinda has, I'm gonna die alone. Anyway, back to Dancing Through Life. Really fun scene. Oh, now I remember why I was talking about that, because Bach and Fiyero also have like a nice little, I don't know, bro-y, but not too bro-y, like sort of moment. I don't know, like they just have like an interaction that I really like, but I couldn't really explain it to you now. He's just like, have some fun, dude. Like, it's kind of cute. Oh yeah, there's another scene where like a bunch of people are fawning over Fiyero and also some men are fawning over Fiyero. I thought that that was fun. But yeah, Dancing Through Life was just amazing. Like, it was just an amazing scene. It was crazy in terms of how it was shot. So now we're still in Dancing Through Life, but we're moving down to the Ozdust. This is something I never understood while watching the stage musical, like what the Ozdust was. Here they make it clear that it's an illegal underground flapper sort of adjacent prohibition era, I don't know, whatever, like party. And like it's illegal, and like you see the animals playing music in the band, which I'm assuming is part of what makes it illegal, right? And so there's something kind of stupid that happens here, but whatever, I guess we'll get over it. So they talk about how illegal the Ozdust is, right? And so they all go to the Ozdust, and it's actually very magical. By some of the shots in the trailer, you wouldn't know it, but it literally looks like it's under the water. It was very, very cool. I thought that it was magical and very pretty. But okay, so the stupid thing that happens here is that obviously Elphaba, during this whole section, is like, oh, Glinda's nice now. Glinda did something nice for Nessa. Glinda did something nice for me. She invited me out. She gave me the hat. So I'm going to ask Madame Morrible to let Glinda in a spellcasting lesson. Now, I guess my one nitpick or one complaint is that we never see Glinda and Elphaba in spellcasting lesson with Madame Marble. We do see a scene with Madame Marble and Elphaba trading by themselves after I think Dr. Dillamond gets arrested and Madame Marble like exploits her emotions, but we're not there yet. And exploits her emotions in order to facilitate Elphaba doing magic because she knows that like when Elphaba's angry it comes out more. So Madame Marble goes to the underground illegal Ozdust party to give Glinda the wand, and she kind of justifies it by saying like, oh, Elphaba told me to give you this wand this very night, like this very second or she would quit my class, right? And then Madame Marble's like, she's actually coming in right now to the Ozdust, and I'm like, the very illegal Ozdust that all of you are breaking curfew to, and Madame Marble doesn't give a fuck. So that's the only thing that I wish that they hadn't done that, because that's weird. I think that that's something that would have originally, I don't actually know. I think that maybe as Glinda's leaving school, that usually happens in the stage adaptation. I don't think it happens at the Ozdust. I think Glinda is leaving to go to the party and Madame Marble catches her in the hall long before they get there. I guess what they were trying to do was make things tighter so that when Glinda realizes, oh, Elphaba did something nice for me and now I treated her badly and now she's gonna come here and be embarrassed. I guess it was just supposed to tighten that so Glinda didn't look like that much of a bitch, right? Because imagine she gets her wand at school, then goes to the party, and then Elphaba gets embarrassed. Like, you know what I mean? And so maybe that's why they did it, but my memory of the stage show is admittedly not good enough to know. But like, it was just funny. Highly illegal Ozdust, and then Madame Marble rolls up with the wand. She's like, Elphaba insisted I come here to give you the wand right now to the highly illegal Ozdust that you're all breaking curfew to go to, but like, whatever, that's like my one thing. The scene where that happens in the middle of Dancing Through Life where Elphaba starts dancing and is like obviously embarrassed. In the stage show, this is a very like sort of quick moment, right? Like where it just sort of happens and Fiyero has that line like she doesn't give a fuck what anybody thinks. He did not say fuck, okay? This is a PG movie, kind of. There was actually, oh, I just remembered, during No One Mourns the Wicked, there was something super sexual with Elphaba's mom and the wizard where he like picks her up by the hips and puts her on a piano and like the keys are slamming and it's obviously supposed to be like an innuendo for something else and she's going, like she's moaning sexually and I was like, oh my God. Like, I did not expect that to happen. And there's another thing with Fiyero where he does something kind of sexually charged too, but I don't remember what it is. Anyway, back to the Ozdust, sorry. So in the musical, this embarrassment moment is something that happens kind of quickly and Glinda jumps in relatively quickly to dance with Elphaba. Here it was really focused on and you actually see Elphaba crying, which I thought was a very good choice because you see both of the girls, I mean, Glinda and Elphaba, incredibly vulnerable in that moment. And you see, because Glinda still has that line of course she cares about what other people think, she just pretends not to. And then you see Elphaba crying, but then when Glinda joins her, it kind of becomes like a crying of almost happy tears or like understanding, because now they, how do I say, like they've been vulnerable with each other and they've seen each other. And so it kind of, this is a weird comparison, but it's just on my mind. So I was reading a Disney art book the other day. I think it was the Villain book. And they talk about how when the Beast looks at Belle, they were trying really hard to make sure it didn't look like he was leering or like looking at her in a sexual way. The implication is that the Beast sees Belle and like sees like kind of into her mind at that moment and sees how good she is and how kind she is and how caring she is for her father. And so it's kind of like she like, you know how in old things they're like, oh, they know each other, right? Or like, you know, Hadestown has that, like, I feel like I've known you all along, and that idea of known, right? And so that's like a very soulmate, soul bound, I don't know, like that sort of thing, right? And so I feel like that they just knew each other in that moment and that the crying facilitated that. And so I feel like that's when we finally locked into the friendship, because the friendship escalates very quickly afterward. We're literally like, they're like, you know, on the bed braiding each other's hair. That didn't happen, but like, you know what I mean? They're talking and Glinda's like, I have a secret, I'm gonna marry Fiyero, right? They're already having girl talk and it's like the night of the Ozdust, but it was believable and it made sense because you had that scene with them crying and that Glinda you know, obviously feels like shit for what she's put Elphaba through, but they also know each other in that moment. They're both vulnerable with each other in that moment. And so that's how the friendship is able to be facilitated, because Elphaba has finally let a wall down, like Glinda has seen her cry, but instead of, you know, continuing to make fun of her, Glinda, you know, decides to be a good friend, to be kind to her as well. And like Glinda also, I think, gets emotional in that scene. She like wipes Elphaba's tears away. So I thought that that was just a really good thing. And like the fact that they focused on that, yeah, I think that that was nice that they focused on, like, oh my god, I've been talking for an hour. This was supposed to be a quick little video, but of course it's not, because it was a 2-hour movie. I have a lot to talk about, okay? So Popular happened. It was good. I liked Popular. I thought it was cute. There was one point where like Glinda was like dancing on a railing, like of the balcony in their room, which was just really crazy. Like the visuals were really crazy for that one, in terms of like it being a musical number and like, you know, Ariana Grande like dancing and stuff. Like that was really, really good. I still like the big production numbers a little bit more. I think that's just because I like a big production number, but I still feel like Popular was really well done. Oh yeah, they still talk about Elphaba and the bottle thing, like the only thing that she has left of her mom. Glinda has a very like nice line where she's like, it's the milk flowers that did that, like not you, like you can't blame yourself for that, which I thought that was really nice. That's probably in the show, but I still thought it was nice to have it in the movie. One Short Day was definitely like show stopping, show stealing. So I am now going to get into like mild spoilers if you care, but it's not really a spoiler because like you know what the plot is. But like if you haven't seen the movie and you're a very big Wicked fan, you may want to like keep this joy for yourself and like probably, I don't know, skip ahead like 5 minutes and hopefully I'll be done talking about it. So there was the cameo with Idina Menzel and Christian Chenoweth, but it wasn't just like a little cameo. It was more substantial than I think that people thought. So first of all, the whole musical number was like beautiful, beautifully shot, like the dancing, everything, but they told a very interesting story where Idina Menzel was playing this like sun goddess and Christian Chenoweth was playing this moon goddess. But the context of this is that this is the play that they go see at the Wizard Mania. And so what they talk about is that there are these old ones, like I guess you could say the sun and moon, right? And so what I really thought was great is that like they talk about a prophecy, right? And this prophecy of the person that will read the grimoire, and that the people basically think it's the wizard. Obviously it's not the wizard, it's Elphaba. She's the only one that can read it. But with Idina Menzel and Christian Chenoweth, because they had this sun and moon imagery going on, it felt like the idea was that the old ones had like died, you know, obviously, or something, and that almost Elphaba and Glinda were like a reincarnation of the old ones. And so I think that that's probably why they picked Christian Chenoweth and Idina Menzel, because the idea is like there were these two powerful beings, powerful witches, the old ones. And now there's this prophecy of the person that will continue on the old one's work, that will be able to read the grimoire, right? And so it makes sense that it would be like Idina Menzel, the original Elphaba, and Christian Chenoweth, the original Glinda, telling this story and portraying these old ones, portraying these gods, because now in the present, you could say like Elphaba is like, you know, one of those, and then Glinda's like the other one. Idina Menzel was the sun one though. Christian Chenoweth was the moon one, which I thought was really interesting, a little like kind of subversion thingy, because you would think that it would be like the opposite, that Elphaba is the moon and then Glinda, yeah, Elphaba is the moon, Glinda is the sun, but they reversed it, sort of. And so I think that that like may have an interesting meaning in it. But that's why I think what they're going to go for isn't only that Elphaba can read the grimoire, but this idea that the animals were more in tune with the great ones and the desire of the great ones, and that's why the wizard is trying to get rid of them. But yeah, One Short Day was just like fantastic. It was beautiful. That's the part of the movie where I was like, finally, everything's more saturated, because, you know, some other sections were not saturated enough to my liking. I think I already mentioned that earlier, but like this part was. The only thing that bothered me was that they put Ariana Grande in this really pale pink dress. I like a bit more of a vibrant pink. I find that especially being as pale as I am, a pale pink like that kind of like weirdly clashes with my skin tone, and so I felt like she got lost in the scene, but that's not her fault. So, oh my god, I forgot about I'm Not That Girl in the Lion. Oh my goodness, guys, I'm so sorry. Oh my god, this video is gonna be such a mess. What am I actually doing here? Oh my god, I totally forgot. You know why? It's because we kind of talked about it earlier. But nice segue. The other place in the film I thought had some really nice color was during I'm Not That Girl, because Fiyero and Elphaba go into this like magical forest to release the lion, and the scenes were really vibrant, and there were these like glow in the dark mushrooms. It was very, very pretty. Yeah, I'm Not That Girl had some unnecessary riffs, but like it was nice. It was a nice song. Still, I liked Elphaba's like yearning and longing, and this idea that it wasn't even like yearning for the man, like it was more yearning for the normalcy. Like the man is part of the normalcy, but it felt less focused on Fiyero, if that makes sense, and more focused on just the general idea of finding love, which I feel like is more well suited to Elphaba's character, because where they were going, oh, the other thing is that Fiyero and Elphaba, Fiyero and Glinda, like started making out right on the lips. Like, I think that probably happens during the stage show too, because Glinda does say, even before like popular, right? Like, oh, we're getting married, but they were like macking or whatever you call it, right? They were like making out, right? Also, this spurs Bach to be like 100% all in on Nessa because he sees them like actually kiss. But that made things messy for me because I was like, well, Elphaba would know, right? That like Fiyero and Glinda are together, like that they're like together, not just that Glinda likes him, but they're like, they have swapped saliva, right? So that wouldn't be very good of her. That wouldn't be very nice if she like covets her best friend's, boyfriend, right? But now it made more sense because it wasn't really about Fiyero. It was just like, obviously he causes Elphaba to feel something, but it's more that she thought that she would never find love. And so like entertaining the idea of what love would be like. And so I thought that was better because I was like, in my head, I was like, how are they going to make this Fiyero thing happen? Because it doesn't seem like Elphaba has feelings for Fiyero right now, like, during the lion scene or anything. Like, I would have been really unconvinced, but it was framed in a convincing way because it wasn't like, oh, Fiyero. It was more like, I could love a guy like Fiyero. I wish love was a possibility for me. It was more framed like that. So anyway, back to One Short Day. Really, really good. I guess now we're getting into the wizard. Sentimental Man did happen. The wizard is very Jeff Goldblum-y. That's his name, right? The guy that plays the wizard. He kind of seems like he's acting like himself. I don't know. I didn't mind that much though. I liked all of his he had a like weird sandbox and all these little toys. And so it really it's crazy how the wizard is like a man-child, but also this powerful political figure. I wonder if that's supposed to be, some sort of commentary given recent events right now. But yeah, it was kind of funny because he has this endearing, almost childlike way of being where he's like, yeah, I don't get out much and I've made these little wooden dolls of people and just observe them from afar and wish I had a family, but also I'm a dictator. And so they made him so likable that it almost made me mad when he was being, because obviously he's a dictator and he's like, oh, the spies and the animals and using people as the enemy. That's not a bad thing. That's a commentary in of itself that oh, the political leader that you could grab a beer with that is relatable to you and oh, they seem so wholesome and then they're doing atrocities. That's a very real thing that happens, right? Just because he's nice doesn't mean that he's good. And so I think that that was actually really good to see him be sort of, again, weird. It was kind of weird because he's so childish and sort of he has this little weird Tomorrowland at Disney, sort of, what do you call it? Diorama, when you have one of the little cities, he has this little city of Oz and all these little dolls of presumably real people because he gives one to Elphaba, a little real doll of herself. Anyway, so all of that being said, that's fun. What else about the wizard? Oh, Sentimental Man happened. I don't think they cut any songs. I don't think they cut anything. They changed one lyric in Popular, but of course I can't remember what it is now. But it wasn't even a lyric change. It was a single word. But yeah, One Short Day was good. Meeting the Wizard was good. It was actually scary. Going into the castle, it was very dark and seeing all, the monkey soldiers and Glinda says hi to them and none of them say hi back and it's a little yeah, it's just scary. It translated differently to the stage. I think that this is the section, to me, that justified this movie being a movie the most, if that makes sense. Because after this, we have a kind of a long climax section before Defying Gravity, where obviously Elphaba turns the monkey into a flying monkey, but she's like mortified at what she's done because she's hurt them, and then she realized, you know, everything about the wizard, that he's the one behind it, that they are the ones targeting the animals, that they're making spies, that they're doing bad things. And so there's a scene of all the flying monkeys outside chasing Elphaba, and they're like crashing through the windows, and like they're like Elphaba and Glinda are running down the hall, and the monkeys are like crashing, and there's flying glass and all that stuff. And then Elphaba and Glinda, they try to escape in the hot air balloon that I guess the wizard used to get here originally, and the guards trap them in, like close the skylight or whatever, like the little dome thingy on top of the roof. And so like the hot air balloon literally gets set on fire and becomes this totally like basically just like a blazing piece of fabric and crashes into the guards, and it was all very dramatic and crazy. And so just watching that like made me a lot more fearful for Elphaba than in the stage version, and I feel like that is necessary. And even Hunter said this too when we were talking, not only the animal plotline being more prominent, but the actual idea that Elphaba is in a lot more danger than she was in the stage show heightens the stakes, and it makes it feel more threatening, that the wizard is an actual threat, because again, a lot of these things were sort of glossed over in the stage version, like, haha, yeah, the wizard has spies, whatever, right? But like now, you actually see the destructive effects, and you see the soldiers, and like Madame Morrible's like, if you want your families to be safe, go find her, and so they're all crashing through the windows and all of that stuff, right? And so finally, Elphaba and Glinda get into like Jeff Goldblum's secret attic of all of his like weird stuff, I guess, and that's where they find the broom and everything. Now, what I didn't understand, I'm pretty sure Elphaba stole the grimoire, but I did not see her re-pick up the satchel that the grimoire was in, so I don't remember how she gets it later, because she puts a spell on Nessa, right, and then she also does a spell on Fiyero, so unless she just like kind of tucked it in the side and I couldn't see it anymore, that was like a continuity error I noticed. Like she had a satchel, and the satchel had the book in it, and she threw the satchel down to do something. And I didn't see her pick the book back up, so I don't know about that, Bestie. Hopefully she picked it up, though, I guess. I can't remember if she, like, lost it and somehow got it back in Act 2. I don't remember. But I'm pretty sure she had it the whole time, which is why I'm like, I think I'll do a separate video probably about predictions for Part 2, because I think that everything, this movie being this long made perfect sense to me. Everything they added, I feel like was necessary, like as someone that loves the stage show, but also feels like that they fumbled a lot of stuff. And so I feel like I'm very excited to talk about like, oh, what will they do in Part 2? What are they gonna add here? Are they gonna add Elphaba doing more revolutionary stuff like she does in the book? I think that they're going to, personally. And so I think that the length was like entirely justified to me. So Defying Gravity, so distracted. The breakup between Glinda and Elphaba here made a lot of sense, because that was the other thing I was worried about, is like, oh, how are they gonna do this breakup? It feels like they just became friends 5 minutes ago, which I know also happens in the musical, like in the regular musical, but I feel like that for some reason, it felt like they became friends really fast. I guess because of that moment at the Ozdust, it was like, oh, this escalated quickly. Like, it's like, if you've ever been to a bar, I haven't, I don't drink. If you've ever been to a bar and you become best friends with the girl in the bathroom, like, that's kind of how it felt. Like, you know, it's always like, how are they gonna do the breakup when they've come so far? But it made a lot of sense because I don't even think it has to do with Glinda being a sellout, even though she definitely is. My interpretation was, this goes back to Elphaba's childhood trauma of being told to just shut up and do as she's told. And so it wasn't like, oh, Glinda, you support the wizard and you're problematic, so I'm canceling you. It was more like, Glinda, I thought you understood me, but now you're telling me that like my voice doesn't matter and to sit down and all of this stuff that my father always told me. That's how it read to me. She didn't explicitly say that, but just how Defying Gravity was framed in their little argument at the beginning, what I got was not like, obviously you have like the grovel and submission to feed your own ambition sort of thing, and like that still hits, and that's still true, but my interpretation was that Elphaba was less mad about Glinda, like, again, selling out or whatever, or just like groveling to appease the wizard and like rub elbows with him, but it was more like, Glinda, I'm upset with you because you're treating me like everyone else has treated me my entire life, right? And I actually like want to stand up for myself. I want to do this. And so I think that that was translated better than in the stage, right? Because like I always wondered how they got from like arguing, then like, hope you're happy now that you're choosing this, right? Because that seems so sincere. So I felt like that this made a lot more sense because it's not Glinda necessarily that Elphaba is mad at. It's just the idea that Glinda would stop her knowing how much this means to her. And I think that Glinda gets over that like really fast. And so that makes sense, right? Because Glinda realizes, oh no, Elphaba does need to do this. I'm not going to hold her back like her father did and tell her to shut up and sit down. Her father does say that, like, stop jibber jabbering or something. I don't know. He says something like that, like, stop. Yeah, I think it's jibber jabber. It has to be just based on what he said. But it was, he's like, just shut up and do what I tell you, right? And so I think it's just an extension of that Elphaba has always been told her voice doesn't matter, especially in relation to Nessa. And so I really liked how they framed that because it makes their friendship breakup make more sense. Because it's not like, Glinda, I hate you because you're a sellout and like you're siding with the wizard. I didn't really get the implication Glinda was siding with the wizard. It was more so that Elphaba was brave enough to like stand up for what she thought for and believed in, but Glinda did not like have that in her, right? Because we have popular and you hear what it takes to be popular, right? And I think Elphaba has this line about Glinda. She has a line at one point that like Glinda also cares what people think a lot. So I think that Elphaba sort of understands that Glinda couldn't go with her. You know what I mean? And why Glinda couldn't go with her. It's not because she didn't support her, but because Glinda didn't know how to be anything else than like a people pleaser almost, right? And so I feel like she didn't resent her for that yet, which also makes me question like how they get feisty in Act 2. I guess it's mostly because of Fiyero, right? Like once Elphaba steals her man, then she gets really mad because now it seemed like we both understand why we're doing this. You know, it's not personal. It's almost like not personal. We're just like two girls trapped in a bad situation with people more powerful than us, right? Because that's something else that happens after Defying Gravity, which I thought was interesting, is that Madame Morriple's like, come here, Glinda, and like kind of like traps her in a hug, and Glinda's just like, okay, right? Because like she's like, well, what the fuck am I supposed to do? You know what I mean? Like, what am I supposed to do about this? Like, because you have these two powerful, adults, right? And so I feel like, not to infantilize the characters, I guess, because they are in college, they're grown people, but to me, it read more than in the stage musical as like Glinda and Elphaba are just sort of two kids, and like it's the powerful adults in this situation that are to blame instead of like, again, sell out Glinda, right? Like maybe that's too generous of a Glinda interpretation, but I feel like that, because obviously, yeah, Glinda does sell out later, like I've already said 10 times, but it felt more like we're both just kids. We shouldn't have to be doing this. We shouldn't have to be rebelling like this. And so I felt like Elphaba really understood why Glinda didn't come with her. It's because she just is like, she couldn't, like she didn't have it in her to be able to. She didn't know how. She wouldn't know how to be a revolutionary like Elphaba, because all she knows is how to be popular and how to be liked and how to be like this people pleaser. And so it's almost like another form, not that Glinda has like this deep trauma or anything, but it's almost like another form of like Elphaba makes a fool of herself in order to kind of be like in on the joke when people make fun of her, right? And so like that's Elphaba's thing, but Glinda's thing is to always be perfect, and so she can't be ridiculed. It's almost like if people, I see this a lot sometimes with people doing karaoke, that they'll sing bad on purpose, because if they sing bad on purpose, that means that they can be like, hi, I wasn't really trying, like we're all in on the joke because they're too afraid to try. I think that Elphaba is kind of like that at some points in the musical, where she's like, well, I'll make fun of myself, because then if they're laughing at me, I know it's because of something that I did. Like it's a form of control. But for Glinda, the popularity angle is her form of control. So all of that said, right, I felt like Defying Gravity was really natural. Like I thought that it was really good. It was really emotional. That was the first time where the music was actually shaking my bones. I don't know if they put up the volume or whatever, but I got like full body chills. So this is gonna be another sort of spoiler thing, kind of like the cameo that I talked about earlier in the One Short Day thing. So if you do not want to hear about this, it's not really a spoiler, but it's one of those things where if you're in the theater yourself, you may want to be surprised by it. So I'd say skip ahead another 5 minutes. So there is a moment where Elphaba is free falling. Like, she hasn't just gotten on the broom and ascended to the sky. She's falling, and like she literally could die. And in the reflection, she sees her younger self. And if everything I've already talked about did not convince me, that is what convinced me that this like deserved to be a film adaptation, because I thought that that was so powerful, and that's not really something that you could do on the stage, at least not in the way that it was. Like, the fact that she was free falling through the air, and then in the reflection of the building, she saw her younger self, and it was just this beautiful, like, I don't know, like just this beautiful metaphor of like her younger self looking back at her, like finally in the Emerald City, finally where she wanted, but obviously not as she hoped. Things are not going as she hoped, right? So like just this like kind of telepathic connection with your younger self, like what would you tell your younger self kind of moment, right? And so I just thought that was so fantastic, and obviously Elphaba gets on the broom and like ascends, right? And that ascension is just so satisfying, and it felt even more satisfying, if I'm honest, than the stage version. The other reason is, and this is not really a spoiler, is because Elphaba bursts every single light in Oz, right? And so when we talk about, stakes and like threat, first of all, they made the wizard feel like much more of a threat, because the climax of the movie, again, monkeys and fire and like all of this shit's going on. But Elphaba destroying like every light in Oz is higher stakes on her end too, because it shows her power. Because that's something like, if you watch the musical, yeah, like she just flies away, right? Like, what damage is Elphaba actually doing? Like, why are people, obviously people are susceptible to propaganda anyway. I'm not saying that they need a reason, right? But like the fact that Elphaba actually had a showcase of power, to me, makes it more convincing for stuff that happens in Act 2. Because you have this witch that just like, she flew away and she did nothing. She flew away and she like allegedly helped some animals, right? It's different when you have the witch who bursts every electrical light bulb in all of Oz. Like, that was crazy, and that was beautiful framing, and again, something that you can't really do in a Broadway show. And so that's another moment where I was like, oh shit, serious. There are stakes here. They're showing Elphaba's power, because that's kind of, again, another complaint I have about the stage show, is that they don't show how powerful Elphaba is. They don't show her going around and fucking stuff up. Like, in March of the Witch Hunters, they sort of allude to what she's been doing, but we don't actually get to see the power that she has. So to see her turn out every single light, and like the city's in darkness, like I kind of get why they like were freaking out, right, in the Emerald City. That like city is in shambles, right? Because Elphaba actually did something toward them that they could like tangibly see what happened. Like they saw all of the lights and all of the power go out. And so I felt like that was such a powerful moment. And what I really like is, again, this commenter who asked about like the movie likes to cut between scenes. Like, what was really nice with Defying Gravity in terms of this being the end of the movie is we get a really nice idea of where everybody is at the end of the movie, right? Like, we see Glinda in awkward hug with Madame Morrible. We see, this is a hilarious scene. This is not really a spoiler either if you've watched the show, but so Nessa is sitting, right, and she's just chilling in Munchkinland, because that's the thing. So to get to the Emerald City, they left Shiz and they went to Munchkinland. So I'm assuming that what happened was like that, I don't know, school's on break or something, or Nessa just decided to stay with her father when all of this was happening. So like the characters are in Munchkinland, they're not back at Shiz. Maybe Fiero is, but Nessa isn't. So Nessa is chilling in the parlor, listening to Madame Morrible be like that wicked green witch, and her green skin is representative of the wickedness that she has inside of her heart. And so Nessa is listening to all of this, and like she looks pissed, right, that her sister has once again like sabotaged things for her or whatever. And Nessa's father is literally dying of shame in the background. He's having a heart attack and he's on the floor dying, and Hunter started laughing, and I'm like, Hunter, no, he's not just being dramatic, he's actually dying. That's how Nessa Glinda becomes governess of Munchkinland, you can't laugh and Underwood was laughing because it was just so ridiculous. Like, it was just him on the floor, and then there were a bunch of nurses just on top of him, and it was in the background of a shot, so of course it was funny. Like, it was funny, but, you know, whatever. He wasn't a nice man. I'm not too mad about that, but, like, it was hilarious. And then you see Fiyero looking at the sky and, like, seeing the green things, and I think he jumps on his horse, or maybe he doesn't, but, like, you kind of get that implication that he's like, oh fuck, something is happening. So I like how we cut to everyone and where everyone's at, because then, you know, we get to check in with everyone. We know how everyone feels. And the end of the movie did say to be continued, and so it kind of knew that it didn't tell a full story. At the same time, it felt full, though, because when you think about it, this is how Elphaba and Glinda became friends. Act 2 is a little bit different. Like, Act 2 is about whether or not Elphaba will decide to stop being wicked, right? And so I think that the reason why this split works is because the first act is about Elphaba and Glinda's friendship, but then the second act is about whether or not these two girls will have a redemption arc in terms of whoever you think needs redemption. Obviously, the wizard thinks it's Elphaba, and then he has Wonderful, and he tries to convince her to join her again. So that's more what Act 2 is about, or to join him again, I should say. That's more what Act 2 is about, at least to me. Act 2 is the idea of, okay, well, we saw what happened in Act 1, we saw the lives that the girls chose, will they undo that? So even though they did split the movies and it did say to be continued, it did feel like a complete story. I guess now I will try to answer some miscellaneous questions if somehow in the last hour that I've been talking, I didn't cover everything. Are the songs great? I thought it was great. I thought it was really, really good. I want to see it again, actually, which is surprising because I'm like usually cheap. I'm like, no, I won't pay for it. I won't do it again. My favorite musical number, I think, was No One Mourns the Wicked or One Short Day. I do like, obviously musically, I like Wizard and I and, oh boy, Defying Gravity, right? But just in terms of like how do I explain this? In terms of my favorite musical number, in terms of like how they utilized the medium of film, I think One Short Day and that moment in Defying Gravity, that spoiler moment I talked about, like, I think that was like actually the best. What songs did they change? I think that the only thing they did was they cut the Mad Immorable part. I don't think they changed anything. Again, some unnecessary riffs, but otherwise nothing. Is it good, and how much did it differ from the musical? I would say that it didn't differ very much in terms of, like, it's not like they, like, included Elphaba's brother. Like, you know what I mean? The brother that she has in the books. Like, all they did was enhance the material that was already in the musical. As far as I can tell, they have not added any book-only material, though I read the books a long time ago. I read them when I was 12, and then I read them again when I was probably 18, and so I'm 25 now. I'm turning 25 in 2 weeks, so it's been a while, so I may be wrong. Probably, if I had to guess the lore about the old ones, maybe movie only? I don't know. Yes, the split was done with, original musical structure. I feel like that didn't harm the viewer's impression at all. I felt like it made perfect sense. Is there any chance the sequel novels will get theatrical adaptations? Now, I was thinking about that, when Hunter and I came home. I was like, it would be really interesting if they did Wicked movie sequels, but also made those movies musicals. Does that make sense? You guys understand what I'm saying? Like, they did Son of a Witch, and it was Son of the Witch, the musical. I'm gonna go ahead and say no, though, just because, like, I think we're done in terms of, I don't know, it's hard to explain, but like there's a lot of political stuff that happens in the book, and even though they're doing more political stuff, they're not doing like the amount of political stuff that would require like Son of a Witch and all of that stuff being adapted. Does that make sense? Like, you need the villains from those stories to be there, and I don't think that they would be there enough. Now, Gregory Maguire is releasing a new book, or maybe he has already, but anyway, he released like a fifth one, because there's the regular one, the first one, Son of a Witch, the one with the lion, and then Out of Oz, right? And Out of Oz is Elphaba's, like, granddaughter. I think that he is doing a fifth book. So what I wonder will happen is that maybe they do the sequel novels in some other way because there's renewed interest in the Wicked IP. Like, I would say, if anything, I know this is so off topic, but I don't care because this video is way too long. Or not off topic, but it's just making the video longer and people are going to be like, how did you talk for an hour? Because I had things to say, bitch, okay? It's my YouTube channel. So I could see what happens is that they make like a Wicked TV series, kind of like Game of Thrones, and that they adapt the book versions, like kind of like how they did with The Witcher and Game of Thrones. I don't think that it would coexist with the like movie Wicked universe. I think if anything, they would do a Wicked adaptation that is like The Witcher and like Game of Thrones, where it is a TV series and it would be unconnected, like from the musical universe. Like, say they adapt Wicked, the life and times of the Wicked Witch of the West, like they would not recast Cynthia for a TV show. She's probably too expensive for a TV show too. Like, they would just have another Wicked universe. The only thing is that I don't think that movie studios like to do that, or like whatever, like companies like to do that very much, because they think that like our pea-sized brains can't handle multiple canons in the same thing at the same time. Does that make sense, right? Like, you wouldn't have Game of Thrones movie and then also Game of Thrones TV show going on at the same time. Like, they just wouldn't do that because they like everything to be canon. So I don't know if there's a chance that the sequel novels will get theatrical adaptations, honestly. I think that the only thing I could see happening is a TV show, and it becomes sort of like the Harry Potter TV show or whatever that they're trying to do. Like, it's kind of like something like that. That's still Universal, right? So anyway, I don't think there's enough evidence of sequel novel material that they could do the sequel novels spun off from this version of Wicked with Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande. Does that make sense? So that was the only other question that people had, I think. I think otherwise I probably covered everything, even though I will wake up in the middle of the night and remember something, because I was trying so hard. I should have brought a notepad or something, but I didn't want to be annoying, and it also wasn't like a press screening. Like, it was an early screening, but it was not like media. It was just like whatever, you could buy a ticket, right? So like, it's 11:30 at night. Oh my god, I'm sure I forgot something, but it was good. I really liked it. I would like to go back to the theater. That's kind of like the highest score I can give something, is that I would pay money to see this again, and I have no money, so you guys know that that means a lot. But yeah, I really liked it. I thought that I cannot wait for the movie to come out on streaming so I can analyze like the shot composition and stuff, because I felt like there were some really interesting choices and that it totally justified it being a film. But I think that that's it from me, because it's a late at night and I'm hungry and I only had popcorn for dinner. So I'm gonna go, but I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys had fun. This has been Killaxon caring way too much, and maybe I'll try to make maybe a shorter video about predictions or theories or something at some point, like in terms of like what is going on with the lore, something like that, but we'll see. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Bye guys.